Subscribers are people and they are not metrics. Hey everybody, my name is Emily Paige Wilson. I'm a poet and I also write novels in verse for young adult readers. And today I wanted to have a discussion about how to practice mindfulness while on Authortube. So welcome back to my channel if you've already checked out some videos. If you are new here, obviously I am a tiny baby channel so far. And to be honest, y'all, I didn't even really know that I was going to start making YouTube videos. This happens to me a lot with things that I've always been drawn to in my life, like jogging or meditating or being a vegetarian. I'll be tangentially exposed to these ideas and these practices for a while, and in the back of my mind, I'll think, oh, that's cool. That aligns with my values. I should try it out sometime. And then one day I just do. Obviously, I probably could have practiced a little bit more before going on YouTube. If you have seen any of my early writing vlogs,
I didn't really know what to do.
And the editing is awful, and we're learning. We are learning. It is fun to learn a new skill. I mean that genuinely. But Emily 6 weeks ago did not have the same amount of skills and insight that I have now. Imagine where we will be 2 months from now. But in starting a YouTube channel to share poetry and writing with y'all, I will be honest, I did feel a little bit conflicted because mindfulness is something that's really important to me. And I think a lot of us have kind of a love-hate relationship with social media. Obviously, there's a lot of literature and conversations around how it can exacerbate some really toxic things. I take a break from Facebook or Twitter, and not so much YouTube. It hasn't happened here, but maybe it will. But when I take a break, sometimes it really does help. It kind of serves as a cleanse for my mental health. So I felt maybe not conflicted, but there was a little bit of a cognitive dissonance between, hey, I think this platform is really cool. I want to be a part of it. I want to talk about poetry in a way that maybe could be spread to more people than it's being spread to now through me specifically, while also realizing that I am then participating in the attention economy in a very different way. And I'm also opening up myself to another social media channel. I have 7 tips for helping to practice mindfulness on Authortube. Probably won't be all universal, and these definitely are not all encompassing. So if you have any ideas or if there are any tips or tricks that you have found helpful, please do leave them in the comments below. The first tip that I have is to establish priorities for your channel, but also just for you as a content creator. Establish priorities and then return to them regularly. So one thing that I did do before starting a channel, I, probably should have spent more time watching resources, reading resources about how to edit and film. But what I did instead was I sat down and I wrote a list of priorities for myself as to why I wanted to have a YouTube channel in addition to, Facebook or Twitter or Patreon. And it really came down to 3 things. One, I wanted to be a part of this community. I have been a silent viewer, maybe not silent, maybe an infrequent
Commenter? Not commentator.
I would comment infrequently. So I have been rooting for so many authors on Authortubes from the sidelines, and I thought that now that I'm on submission, it would be really fun to be able to be a part of this community in a more vocal way, and also just to network and to support others in their journey as well. I also thought that it would be really cool to have a longer format in which to talk about poetry. I haven't shot them yet, but I really do hope to launch a poetry prompt series. Typically, in order to share poetry prompts, what I would do is go to classrooms or host free writing workshops to the public in libraries. While these opportunities are amazing, I miss them very much. I miss being able to interact in person with people about poetry. But I really started to think about, in lieu of not being able to have in-person readings, what could I do to share poetry, my poetry, my chapbook, but also just poetry in general with people in a longer format, a format that's longer and more engaging than a social media post or a tweet. And the thing about Authortube was that it seemed to me that it presented a lot of agency and a lot of creative flexibility and freedom. And so that's something that I was really looking forward to, in addition to, I guess it's kind of a fourth priority, in addition to just being able to celebrate. So I think a lot of us who had books come out in 2020, and if you're a 2020 author, whether it's debut or whether it's a second or third or fourth piece, let me know what the experience was like for you, because I know it came with a lot of challenges and frustrations and disappointments, in addition to still being something that's deserving of joy and celebration. I know that in 2022, I will have my full-length debut collection come out. It's entitled Yalubi. It's about my Czech heritage. It's about language translation. I am so excited to share it with you guys. We haven't finalized the cover yet, but we've been working on it, and those are the things I want to be able to share with an audience. I want to be able to say, hey, look at this cover. I'm so excited. Hopefully, you know, knock on wood, I'll knock on my leaning bookshelf. Hopefully, I will be in a position in a while where I can say, oh, I've gotten a book deal. I'm on submission right now, and I know that you're supposed to keep that process hush hush, but how cool would it be to be able to celebrate these milestones with the community? So in thinking about why I came to YouTube, I have that list written down, and I return to it sometimes either before I upload a video, or maybe if I get caught up, and I'll be completely honest, right? I'll speak from my experience, but if this resonates with you, let me know down below. I think a lot of times, again, because we live in a capitalist society, we're a productivity-focused country, to the detriment of our mental health, I think, to be quite frank. This idea that,
oh, you have to upload something immediately and it has to gain immediate attention, and if it's not getting thousands of views and you're not getting hundreds of subscribers,
you internalize that as if it has something to do with the value of your content and who you are as a creator, both on YouTube or Authortube and as a writer. And that's simply not true. So if I ever catch myself getting into that pattern of thinking, which is just not helpful, I return to my priorities, and it helps me put the ego aside, and it helps me maintain this practice of being mindful and grateful that I even get the chance to experiment and to grow on this platform, really all in the sake of what's most important, which is to be able to share poetry. My second tip is to kind of ritualize the process of uploads. So not only, you know, making sure that you're posting around the same time or the same day for that algorithm, but also just ritualizing it for yourself so that it feels like a small but special moment. So whether that's lighting a candle, you know, if you want to light a green candle to bring in that abundance, yellow for that creativity, whether it's lighting a candle or whether it's treating yourself to, you know, a small cup of coffee or a treat while it uploads, because you did something, you've created this content and you're vulnerable and brave enough to be able to share it with a community. I think that those things are important, right? Whether you meditate 5 minutes before or 5 minutes after, and again, just reflect on your priorities. I think ritualizing the upload process in the same way that a lot of authors will ritualize their writing process. You know, where are they in terms of, are they writing in the same place, at a desk, at a park? Do they have a favorite beverage with them? Is it a certain time of day? Is there a certain type of scent? Are they listening to a certain type of music? If we bring those practices to the process of uploading to YouTube, I think that the ritualization can help infuse this process with a little bit more mindfulness and meaning. The third thing is probably the most important thing. Subscribers are people and they are not metrics. So this goes back to what I was saying earlier. I don't know why. I mean, I'm sure there's a reason, because they're very smart people, again, in the attention economy, working to make sure that they hold on to our attention. But I don't know why we talk about connections on social media platforms as being subscribers or followers, which creates this like passive, it creates this passivity, I feel like, and almost this commodification of the people that we are connecting with. Everyone that you are going to connect with is in some way a creator of their own volition, right? Whether or not they're writing, if they're readers, they're still creative individuals. And so when you stop thinking about connections as metrics, right? Like I mentioned earlier, this push to be productive and to grow, if you stop feeling like, oh, I've got to get these certain connections within this certain amount of time, or certain subscribers to grow, and the algorithm's gonna see this and this. If you stop thinking about it from purely a quantitative perspective and shift your mindset to a qualitative, how cool is that? My camera fell over. My camera fell over and I thought I had corrected it, but I turned the recording off. So hopefully I made an articulate and eloquent point about why you should treat people like connections as opposed to metrics building your YouTube channel. The fourth tip that I have, which is one that I practice for myself, is to separate networking days and entertainment days when you log into YouTube. So I can speak from firsthand that if I'm having a bad day, if something frustrating or challenging happened at work, if I got a particularly painful rejection, something is going on with friends or family and I feel a little bit drained, if I log into Authortube and I see somebody has good news and they're celebrating something, instead of being able to meet them where I should be meeting them at, which is with congratulations and joy and participating in that celebration, I probably, because I'm approaching that video in a negative space, I probably will resort to being jealous.
And I hate that feeling.
Now, some of you may be watching this video and you may be like,
I've never experienced that. You're so 2008. I'm super enlightened.
and let me know how you got there if that's where you're at. For me, and I'll just speak for myself, I have learned to identify that behavior in myself. It will bleed into the way that I perceive other people's success. And I do not like that, but I do think it is a human tendency. I don't think I'm alone in having experienced the green-eyed monster. Alexa Dunn recently called this feeling compare and despair, which I think is aptly named. So for me, if I know that I'm having a bad day, I'm not going to be able to share in somebody's celebration, or not even a celebration. It doesn't have to be a book deal video or an agent signing video. It could just be, I know that this person is awesome and I support them, but I'm going to compare myself to where they are and I'm not in the headspace for that. What I'll do instead, if I go into YouTube and I just need to zone out for a while, is I will practice that mindfulness with myself. I'll get a temperature read on my own emotions, and then I'll say, you know what, as much as I'm looking forward to watching this video, this Authortube video, I'm gonna put it in my watch later playlist, and I'm gonna zone out to something that's a beauty vlog or a lifestyle blog and vlog. I'm gonna tune out and I'm just gonna enjoy something that's not writing related, because that's another way that I think the pressure to always be performing and to always being productive can affect us on Authortube. Sometimes I have to remind myself, you do not always have to be networking. If I log into the Authortube platform and I see other Authortubers uploading videos, sometimes the negative self-talk will say,
oh, well, you could be doing more. You really shouldn't be de-stressing after work like this. This is too passive. This isn't productive. Why aren't you editing right now? Why aren't you filming right now? Look at what everybody else is doing.
And so logging into YouTube, having that sense of self-awareness and honesty, and just to say, hey, some days are networking days and some days are days where I'm just gonna watch somebody blend their eyeshadow perfectly. That's been a tip that's been really helpful for me. So this tip number 5, is really important to me.
Again, clapping for emphasis.
You don't have to post if the posting is making you anxious. And you know, a lot of these tips are really me talking to myself. If they are helpful for you, let me know. If these are things that you've thought about yourself, that you already practice, if you have other tips that you practice, because I don't want to come off sounding prescriptive. And for some of you, these things may not be an issue. For me, they are. And I would imagine that for others, they probably are as well. Sometimes, again, with this instant gratification culture in which we live, there's this idea that as soon as we post a video, you know, we're tracking, I'll speak for myself. I have this instinct to track the metrics, to see how many views it's getting, if it's getting comments, what do the engagement metrics look like, how is it stacking up to videos I've already posted. That takes up so much headspace. Like, it really does for me. It takes up a lot of headspace, and I don't want to be living in that headspace for the rest of the day. So as a small channel, you know, I don't think anybody's relying on this content necessarily. You know, it's not monetized. I don't have a big following where I have promised them a certain upload schedule. You have the freedom to put your mental health first and to say, hey, you know what? I am not feeling like posting a video today. It's not going to be the day. Let me do things that are going to recharge my mood, right? Like for me, it'll be smelling peppermint oil or going on a walk or listening to my favorite music or drinking water, making sure I've had a snack.
I get hangry.
I just want to articulate to anyone who needs to hear it, you don't owe anybody an upload, or odds are you probably don't owe anybody an upload. So if you know that you're already anxious and you know as soon as you post that you're going to be spending a prolonged amount of time refreshing for the metrics, and that might make you feel bad if the metrics aren't what you had anticipated or what you perceived you should be getting, you don't have to post. That content's there, you can postpone it, and all will still be well. So the sixth tip is related back to the second, in that your reach is not necessarily a reflection of the quality of your content. YouTube is big, Authortube is big. It's a search engine, essentially. You know, in the same way as if I have a book on a shelf in a library and somebody doesn't walk down that aisle, I can't feel like I'm not a good author because somebody wasn't exposed to my book and then didn't pick it up. And I really just want to share that just because, you know, your video maybe isn't landing in many people's feeds doesn't mean anything about the quality of the content in the video. Both the ideas that you're sharing and then also personality that you were able to infuse and the skills that you were able to demonstrate with editing. You know, I think about this a lot when it comes to poetry readings. So when we were able to have in-person poetry readings or even virtual readings, I had a virtual reading, I guess it would have been last year, 2020, maybe spring of 2020. Where I invited a poet, Eric Tran. I will leave his information down below. He's also a graduate of the MFA program at UNCW, and we just hadn't been able to, I think I actually lived in the house he lived in when he was a grad student, but we missed each other by a year or two, and I hadn't been able to connect, and so I asked him, hey, I'm gonna do a reading at the New Hanover County Public Library. I'd love for you to read with me, and we had a reading. And it was really, I thought it was a great reading. I really appreciated it. I appreciated Eric's time and being able to connect. It was also the first time, my grandmother was able to go to a poetry reading. She was able to tune in virtually. Hi, Grandma, if you're watching. And that was so meaningful for me. You know, she texted me afterwards. She's like, oh, that was so fun. It was like we were hanging out. And the reach of that reading was still pretty small. And I say small only in terms of, I think we had maybe 25, 30 people in attendance. You know, that's not selling out stadiums, right? So maybe the reach wasn't as wide as, you know, you dream of before you get really immersed into the world of publishing. Even though my local librarian, Dorothy, said that it was a really good turnout for poetry readings that they've had, but think about the quality of engagement that I had. I got to connect with a poet who I really admire, and then my grandmother got to see me read. My sister was there, my mom was there. It was really meaningful. And so I try to keep that perspective in mind when I share YouTube videos. That as long as I am proud of the content, as long as I believe that there's something in there that is worth sharing with other people that could be helpful, whether it's a sit-down chat like this where we can talk about mindfulness, whether it's poetry prompts where I can share creative ideas with others, that content is neither confirmed nor negated by the amount of engagement. Yes, the engagement is nice, but what's most important is that you are proud of the work you're sharing. All right, friends, and the last one, you know, so new agey, who hasn't talked about this, but really, it's really important. So the last one is practice gratitude. And I know sometimes that's easier said than done. I know we've probably heard this platitude a lot. I'm not talking about toxic positivity. I'm not talking about that. What I am sharing though is what has been helpful for me. Again, is to remember that we are living in an intention economy. So, tricky vowels there. So if you watch my vlog videos, my writing vlogs, you'll see that so often I refer to not necessarily the language that I create in any day's worth of writing, but it's the quality of attention I can bring to the page. And I can sit here and tell you guys, oh, I've been meditating for years and I'm doing a video on mindfulness. It is something I struggle with all the freaking time. Like, I am shooting this video pretty early in the morning and I made a cup of decaf coffee and I sat down to read. But even in reading, which I'm finishing up Tommy Orange's There, and that book is phenomenal. It deserves all the hype. It is so good. But even while I was reading, I was still thinking about, okay, well, what am I gonna say in this video when I record it later? So when I see people have watched my videos, that is something that I think about. They took their time. What a precious resource. They took their time and they focused their attention on what I was saying. And that is a gift. And I really share that so we don't lose sight of that. You know, nobody owes us our time. It's the same thing with Patreon. I made a video talking about how much money I made from poetry in 2020. Nobody owes you their time or their money.
I mean, unless you have contracts, you know.
But YouTube connections don't owe anybody time. And so the fact that they're willing to give their time to hear what you have to say, again, that's something that's really beautiful. And I don't mean to get too Hallmark card-esque about it, but I think when you put that into perspective, it's really illuminating and it changes. For me, it has the power to change my headspace into something that's more positive. At the time that I'm recording this, I think my How I Got an Agent video has like 60 something views. I could say, oh, well, that's not 100 and it's not 1,000. Or I could say 60 people took the time,
Clapping again,
took the time to sit down with my videos out of their busy day. How do you not feel grateful when you shift your perspective to that? Or maybe that's already the perspective you've been able to cultivate. And again, that video then has had twice the reach of the poetry reading that I just talked about. And that is also recorded and people can use it as an evergreen resource. When I think about that opportunity and how, you know, that opportunity to create something that has a wide reach and that is evergreen hasn't necessarily been available to me in the work that I've been doing on other social media platforms, I feel very excited. And I also feel so grateful when people subscribe. I'm like, whoa, I got a new one. When I went from like 12 to 13, for some reason I was like,
I have 13 subscribers.
so if you do subscribe to this video, thank you. Please know that I'm gonna do a happy dance in my kitchen. So again, thank you guys so much for hanging out. I hope this video reflects the fact that I am so appreciative of everybody who spends the time watching this video. Please do let me know down below if you have found any of these tips to be helpful. Also, what tips do you use to practice mindfulness on Authortube or even just the writing life in general? You know, especially if you're querying agents, if you're on submission, if you're in the poetry contest trenches trying to get a full length out. Let me know down below what pitfalls you fall into when trying to practice mindfulness, and then what tools you use to refocus yourself as you move forward. So thanks again, guys, for hanging out, and I'll see you next time.